What is this? Okay, we've been very critical about the Young Turks because technically they've been on the side of Republicans anyway, no matter what they say. Did I do a clip? Oh no, I did a thing on Instagram on Sync because holy cow. Somebody did some major research, even beyond what I did pulling up these other clip things, where they pulled up his old blogs. Oh my goodness. Are they bad? But we're not going to get into that today. So apparently Fox is like, oh, we totally relate with Anna here. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you guys remember like in 2010 or 28, 208, I don't know, whatever. They were promoting raping kids and wanting to lower the age of consent. And then they were okay, some of the people that were part of their, whole thing, like Kyle and all of them, were like like, male supremacy, basically. They were saying women are weak, and then they wanted to promote having sex with a driving instructor for payment, like some weird thing. And then they're like, see, but we're pro sex worker. I'm like, that is not proper. Yeah, because it would get only poor women and sexually harassing us, by the way, because it said that only the instructor could ask and proposition the person in order to do this payment thing, right? So they totally promoted that, right? So here Fox is like, yes, we're totally on her side. So it's all, but you know what else isn't effective? Using taxpayers' money, funneling it to nonprofits so they can literally buy crack pipes. This came out of Anna's mouth, you guys. I'm just like, what are you saying here? She's like, San Francisco is a terrifying nightmare. You're gonna get robbed. Well, you weren't alive in the 90s, I guess, man, because you're the 60s. I don't know what the hell. There was a lot of stuff going on out there. And there was a lot of homelessness, by the way, in the early 90s portion in San Francisco. It was always there, by the way, guys. I'm from up by there. And yeah, so that was always there. But they were mostly like these hippy dippy guys that you weren't even like scared of. Like they just kind of wandered. They were left over from the 1960s, right? And no, we used to go cruise out there all the time and just hang out and go shopping and go ghost hunting and all sorts of fun stuff. But no, it was there. It's just that people ignored it, right? It was like, oh, it's just part of the natural background. There's these homeless people and crime. There was massive crime back in the 90s and 80s. That's where all the serial killers were, honey. Um, okay, so progressive. This is not progressive, by the way. Progressive political commentator Anna pulled no punches in her assessment of how bad liberal Mecca San Francisco has become thanks to rising crime, homelessness, and Democrat policies. You guys, it's always been here. The problem I've been talking about here, like in my own place, they kind of been pushing them out in the outskirts of areas because they've been rising the income in some areas, so they kind of push them out, and they're pushing out, they're pushing out. You're seeing this weird thing going on, right? And more people are going homeless because of the cost of living, right? And the pay is not actually equating to the rents out here, okay? Like, and the owners are rising. Yeah, it's getting outrageous, right? As far as those policies go. But during the last episode, a businessman and commentator Patrick, the co-host, called the California city a nightmare and warned visitors, "Your car's gonna get broken into, okay? You're gonna get robbed." It's not really a new thing, mostly in San Francisco. I mean, it's not a new thing, but it probably was a thing where in the 90s, there wasn't like this massive like hate speech towards poor people. Like I said, there was a different verbiage on them, though they probably still thought they were lazy and they just didn't want jobs. But there wasn't this like over the top, like we should target them, they're disgusting, we should do all this, right? There was a massive crack problem in the 80s and 90s as well. So it's not really such a new thing. The homelessness was always a problem, but some additions with that. It was hard to know because they didn't do head counts at that time. I will tell you that at the time in the 90s, there it was probably almost the same because anywhere I walked, there was homeless people everywhere. And I think that most people just didn't care because it's like intermixed with like tourism and stuff. And so there wasn't this ultra focus on something. You know, when you don't pay attention to something, then you just ignore that it's there. But then when you're focused on something, you all of a sudden see it all over the place. Yeah, kind of that effect I think is going on. That's kind of one portion. And people didn't have. Now you're seeing something different because people didn't have a lot of the RVs back then because that was a newer thing. I don't know what year like those RVs came out, but a lot of them were too expensive to purchase in the 90s portion, whereas now people are purchasing those old vehicles and hardly any of them work, right? From the 80s and 90s. Yeah, that's another thing that was part of it. So most people back then, like I said, they either stayed in their cars or out on the street or in hotels. That was more of the thing there. And then a lot of them just stayed on the street. That a lot of them were down more in the downtown area, but they were definitely all over Hollywood. Like it was just like I don't even think that half those people even had a place to stay. They just like went door to door. Yeah, and all my stuff was stolen. Yeah, so that no, that's not actually new. The conversation began with Bet David bringing up the ex post from last month in which she claimed California is without question a shit show under Newsom. Uh, when has it been good though? I mean, beyond him, he's a joke. But I mean, when was it? When was it good? Because it was Brown, and then you had Schwarzenegger, who totally knows about the homeless problem because they went and taped right in the middle of their homes. Yes, and I worked with them during that. Yeah, and then she says she's a Los Angeles native. Well, if you're a native here, then you know what how bad it has always been. I'm more native to San Francisco than here, but technically, because it was kind of all through my childhood here, both areas, so I know exactly what happened in the 90s or in the 80s. So, told the podcast co-host that she believed her hometown in California still have a lot of potential, but there have been some policies implemented that have been disastrous. Okay, what are these policies? She took aim at Governor, okay, Gavin, the state saying, so Gavin Newsom and the current Democrat legislature in the state of California have engaged in this trend of decriminalizing everything and refusing to regulate things. She mentioned that the state government has done this with prostitution, for example. Oh, so you're going to use the word prostitution. So you want to arrest yourself. Okay. That's interesting. No one is safe. Are you really in danger by a sex worker? I'm just questioning this, by the way. This is interesting. So she's supposed to be progressive. I'm just saying. We're not for human trafficking, which was going on actually here in California, which you're from, right, Anna? Okay. But it's interesting that she's focused on that. I mean, if that's all I saw out here, it would be the least of my concerns, versus a prowling man. But okay, no one is safe. Everyone's angry, and you see all sorts of terrible stuff happening right there in broad daylight in the middle of the street. That's the 90s for me, honey. That's exactly, they would pull out guns in the middle of the street. Hey, why don't you ask some of these, like, rapper dudes? They know exactly what the hell happened in the 90s. That was crazy, stuff that went on. They did the same thing with drugs. So, wait, weren't you guys, like, pro, like, legalize? I know Kyle was. To the point where I said, you can't do crack though, dude. Like, I mean, I was talking about this. I was like, they should legalize, like, pot should be legal, right? Like, it's not anything where somebody's killing people for it, right? Like, and it's not a thing where you feel the need to go like rob a place for it, right? So I was like, and it's used for medical purposes, right? So that was one thing I was actually for. I was like, just legalize it because it's not technically like a drug per se. It's a herb, but anyway, that whole thing. But then they started going into like heroin and crack, and I'm like, trust, you don't want the crack thing because it's not a thing where if they legalized it or decriminalized it, where like let's say government was giving it to them because they're addicts, right? I'm like, they would never leave the damn office. Like there was a thing with it, right? Now with heroin, they have some other things to help them with that addiction, right? But crack, no. That was one thing where I was like, you're kind of losing me on that one because that situation there was not fixable with these guys. And yeah, no. But anyway, but she goes like this. So what do you see in California? A bunch of people shooting up, okay? And smoking crack all over the place. Again, that's 1990s for me. I was like, that's nothing different for me. It just means that nothing changed. I didn't know crack was still like a big thing right now. You know what I mean? Because of the 90s, that was pretty crazy. But yeah, and so why are they doing this though? You gotta kind of sit with this. For most of them, anyway. These other ones that I'm talking about are just full on criminals, right? But there's a lot of things going on here. So she goes, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in seeing that. Well, oh, boo hoo, I'm not interested in seeing a lot of people right now, but, if there's problems in the world, like what your richness should be able to just make it disappear, right? So then, yeah, so then it kind of promoted government here to go and kidnap people off the street. Basically, they tried to put that out, right? She's for that, I'm sure. I don't think that we should be, dealing with that on the metro system. Why do taxpayers have to deal with that? Oh, boohoo, we're sorry you're not going through any bad times. You know what I mean? Like the way that these people talk about it is disgusting. Of course, like, you don't want to see these like people suffering out in front of you and doing these crimes because whatever the stem off is for it. But the way she's talking about it is like, I don't want to see these people in, horrible, suffering situations. They can't, pay for rent or whatever. We don't know what their problem is, right? Because there was a whole bunch of people that during the fire, I said they threw them all out on the street. And there was multiple fires in California, all the way up to Northern California, to where everybody lost all their belongings, right? Everything they owned, because some people like bought those houses like a million years ago, right? And then they just live on like their pension, like something like that. Government just threw them all out on the street. You know what I mean? Some people get depressed and then they get a drug addiction, right? Like, who knows what is going on? But they're not all on drugs. So she's kind of painting this picture like everybody out here is on drugs. She sees a couple people on the metro line. You know what I mean? But outside that, there's a lot of people in San Francisco. Like some are going to school, maybe some are going to jobs, but they don't have a place because it's so damn expensive that they have to go live in certain other areas where you're not necessarily seeing them, right? She's like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Okay, so the Young Turks co-host then tore into San Francisco. San Francisco is terrifying. Good to move on. It's terrifying here, but we don't have that choice like you do, Miss. Thing. And it's hilarious to me because the business community there wants to put lipstick on a pig. They want to put out this 4 million ad campaign pretending as though everything in San Francisco is hunky dory. She ripped the notion it's not hunky dory. San Francisco is a nightmare. Yes, violent crime went down a little bit, but your car's gonna get broken into, okay? You're gonna get robbed. And they're like, welcome to New York. I mean, it's just not right. There are certain issues that we've had for a long time. The drug war was a failure. Okay, but you just went on the crack addicts. Okay. The drug war was a failure, and so is going back to the drug war. I don't think it's going to be effective. What? Wait, but then she. Wait, what? Didn't she? Okay, they did the same thing with drugs. Wait, they did the same thing with drugs. So what do you see in California? A bunch of people shooting up, okay, and smoking crack all over the place. Okay, so I just want to make sure. Going back to that. Going back to this. I mean, it's just not right. There are certain issues that we've had for a long time. The drug war was a failure, and so going back to the drug war, I don't think is going to be effective. Okay, so she then asks, but you know what else isn't effective? Using taxpayer money, funneling it to nonprofits so they can literally buy crack pipes and hand them out at Skid Row. Is this going on? What do you want? What do you want? Okay, so if you're against their drug war and somebody has a drug addiction, so what are you asking for here? Because the other thing was to decriminalize it, and you know what I mean? Like, it's this thing. I don't know. I would have to search, are they handing out crack pipes? I don't know. She's just making some shit up. Okay, so she said it has made waves in recent months as a progressive, tired of failing leftist. Okay, so now she's moving over to the right. Got it. She needs some attention. During the summer, she ripped leftists for promoting gender-affirming care. Wow, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, so or transgender medical procedures for minors, stating that puberty blockers can cause irreparable harm to children. Most recently, the commentator ripped the left for obsession with race and gender, stating, the biggest challenge that some of you might have noticed with me is that I'm done with the identitarian garbage, and I'm done with it. It's a giant distraction. There was a long history of them going down this like route. It's crazy. She's been saying crazy stuff, and they were the ones that were trying to promote like to lower the age of consent, and she kind of goes along with stuff, and then it's she's actually been in the room with Republicans because Sink was a straight up Republican, even though when I was a kid that I didn't even understand politics, so I thought I was Republican, but I actually was never actually a Republican, by the way, because I didn't really understand politics as a kid. And so I actually didn't have a lot of that perspective. There were some things I did just because of the religious thing at the beginning, but no, technically no, I wouldn't be for any of this. And so no, gender is a major issue. So I don't know why she feels the need to jump on a train that makes no sense. So what? Okay, so if you're gonna go like this was my thing about it. If you're gonna go like this, then you need to have a reasonable like solution to this problem. Because if you're not for the drug war, then it would mean that you're for legalizing something. But if they're actually handing out crack pipes, then that would fit into what you guys are asking for. I don't know if they're doing that, but I'm just saying she said that. So I'm like, I'm not for legalizing crack. Okay, so but this is them, right? So I'm like, yeah, I had a little problem with some of that. Some of it, but they're saying decriminalize. I go, depends, because if you're talking about the individuals that I'm speaking about from that time period, no, they needed to be in prison. And mostly for giving drugs to children or trying to get them involved into a drug ring. You know what I mean? Like those type of things. That's a different thing. But no, so what is her solution? So now she wants to target women with the prostitution. She shouldn't use that term, so she's using it. She doesn't care. They, like I said, they've been a problem. They've been a real big problem since the get-go, because I was like, I could sit there for about a second and listen to some of their stuff, and I consider myself extraordinarily progressive. And they basically just hold Christian ideology, and then she's circling back around, right? Because I'm trying to figure out what her problem is. I was like, if she's from LA, then she knows damn well that was always going on. I mean, you just didn't pay attention. I mean, they were literally, everyone was doing crack all around me. You know what I mean? They were in the streets all night long. Like, no one went anywhere. That's what I was saying. I go, I don't even think any of those people had a home. Because they were like up all night. They would go from door to door. They would go sleep at someone's couch. They would go out all night and party. Then they would go do all this other crap, right? And they were all over the street, everywhere. Like, just going back into it, I go, they were everywhere, but they're kind of intermingled when everybody's like coming out here as a tourist, right? So you just see all these people out here, and then in the mix is all these like shady characters, right? And so just because she was dumb and didn't pay attention doesn't mean it wasn't always like that. But here, when we're speaking of here, it's definitely because the genification. I don't know how to say it. It's when they start revamping the areas, right? And so they start pushing out people from certain cities, right? And it starts pushing them out, and they start collecting in the other areas that haven't really been upkept. And so then there's all this crime in that area, right? And it's kind of it's like clockwork, you guys, like a 5 year period. I was saying just in the last 10 years, actually, when I was in North Hollywood. It was always bad in North Hollywood, okay? It was never like this great place. But while I was in this one building, there wasn't a lot of action there. There really wasn't. It was quite it wasn't the greatest area, but it wasn't the worst. There just wasn't a lot of action over there. And all of a sudden, they all start moving in there, and all these gangs start coming in, and all of a sudden these wars start happening, right? It was just like this progression in this 5 year period. And then all of a sudden the shootouts start happening, right? And then they start running across the building. It happened like that, right? Now it's pretty infested. So now they made steak, And then what's just going to happen is they'll probably eventually start vamping up the areas again, and they'll start pushing them out more and pushing them out more. And then people are losing their places again because of the rental thing, right? Now, in the 90s, the rent was not that ridiculous. I mean, it was high in some areas, but it wasn't like where you couldn't get a job and pay for it, Sure. But, and then it did get to a point, but beyond that, it was really hard to live just generally, even then, I should just say, even then it was. And so then a lot of people used to just stay in warehouses. So you may not know this history, actually. And you just sound like an idiot. So yeah, they would. And musicians. Yeah. So what musicians would do, one of the things that they did that was really popular is they would get a rehearsal studio that was cheaper than like a regular apartment sometimes. But they would all split the money to go get that. And it would be like $400 a month or something. So then it would be like 4 guys, and they would spend $100 for rent and stay in that damn freaking rehearsal studio. So technically, were they homeless? Kinda. That's the things that they did. I don't know if you could really do that today, because to even rent those places, it would cost as much as probably an apartment. And they have security now and watch things, whereas back then it was a lot easier to kind of get around a lot of things where people didn't really care or notice, or you know what I mean. It was a little different back then. And so they had some other options, whereas they don't have as much options today, because even something like that would be astronomical to split. Not to say that that isn't happening. It actually could still be happening, and I'm just not aware of it. But I couldn't imagine it being worthwhile to do that. But today, I don't know. But they could be. They're not going to be talking about it so much till after the fact. And other people just got a lot of friends, right? So the way that these men would grift off of everybody is they would be friends with all these people, right? So then they would go stay at their house a couple nights a week. Then they go jump over to somebody else's house a couple nights a week. That's how they lived. That's homeless. That's how they were surviving. And so I don't know what they're talking about. Because I'm like, when I was out here, there was tons of vets. They didn't have a place to stay, and they just slept out in the park. And then you had there was just people everywhere. I don't know what she's talking about. That was always the thing. They didn't do head counts. They didn't care. You didn't care. Because you didn't care doesn't mean it wasn't here. But if you're sitting there getting patted on the back from Fox, so I guess she's going to make a move to go to Fox. Yeah, when your side starts losing for some of the things that you were backing, so you don't have a solution to this. So what is your solution, Anna? You're asking to regulate sex work? Okay, so I want to say something about this topic right here. So for me, when I was actually going on this topic originally, I had to actually talk to some sex workers because they were getting a little upset because here's what I was asking for. And I want to put my stance on why I was originally asking for it and to what their argument was for it, and they won the argument, okay? So my argument was to legalize it because to make sure that I can go in and report the conduct of any, I don't know, just because of my job, right? But technically, our job was not had anything to do with sex work, right? So I'm going at it in a my thinking about it was wrong. Okay, so I want to talk about how my perception of this problem was wrong. So I was saying, no, you want it to be legalized, and they came at me and said no, and then we got in this conversation and they said, no, decriminalize. And I was like, oh, why would that be? And we got into this discussion. And yes, you don't want government dictating your sex work. You know what I mean? That whole thing. Because it's just them being a pimp then basically in a whole different way. It was this whole other conversation. But anyway, so what you want them to do is decriminalize so they're not getting arrested. And if there is human trafficking going on, then the right people get arrested for it, right? So that you're not out here targeting women generally. So she's wanting them to regulate sex work. You wouldn't want to I mean, you wouldn't want that thing. You wouldn't want it to, but here's what you don't want it to do either. So you don't want it to be done by, like, say, a lawyer sitting there propositioning me to do something. So that's, no, then in which case he should get busted because it shouldn't be going on in exchange for services, right? So I was actually talking about that. So there's some more things with that. But yeah, I was trying to make sure that those things were not crossing over. And so, yeah, we got into a conversation about it. So I was like, yeah, okay, decriminalize, whatever. Where government's not targeting women under the pretense that everybody's a sex worker, right? Because you don't want that at all. And you don't want them telling you what to do at your job. Like you're expected to have sex with that guy, something like that. So she went there. That's why I said it's important to not mute people because sometimes your opinion could be wrong and not purposely to harm somebody else, but it's the perspective and what it can do and hurt somebody else because I'm coming at it from a against my will situation, and they're coming at it as even if it's just survival or that they had purposely chose to do those jobs, right? That you don't want to cross over into some other territory where it harms or kills them or anything like that. And so it's actually important to express your opinion about that too, which it may sound bad to somebody at the time of, but it's important so you can have these conversations so you don't start pushing for something that's actually harmful to others, such as Sesta Foster, right, which was really bad. That one was an obvious bad. The Backpage thing was obvious bad. But then government started they're targeting all of us, like the people in my comments, everybody, and the writers, right? So there were some writers, some book writers and things where they did maybe adult novels or something of that nature, and they were getting targeted. And then you're seeing now where they're trying to go after books, you know what I mean? And they're doing this. It's such a long stem off of stuff that it's they need to control that conduct. And otherwise, she's going to keep losing her rights. And so she's saying she literally brushed off women as what did she say? It's a giant distraction. Oh, yeah. So she's back on that identity politics, and I'm done. So she's done fighting for her rights. Okay. So that's great. You should care about your identity because you don't have any power, girl. So you have found the way to come into the crowd of Fox News. Okay, and I've been seeing a bunch of women doing this, and this is psychotic. So, who do you think just took away your production rights? Wait. What did they say? Okay, watch. Let's see. Wait, I want to read this one too because this one's ridiculous. This one came up in August. Okay, so she's already having a flip out in August. Okay, she's been flipping out. It says, during the discussion of feminism and the concept of women in the workforce versus staying at home, took a beat to chastise the left's obsession with identity politics. They argue that the garbage political topics distract the country from the real concrete issue that needs solving and promotes further conflict among Americans. No, their hatred of women is definitely the core root here. So, okay. Her forceful. This is wonderful hearing a woman just like completely like screw the fact that I'm a woman and I have no fucking power. Her forceful stance against identity politics reflects her growing skepticism of the left's political priorities, a development she admitted to her audience she's going through. When have you not? Popped up and she and co-host Sank. Do you want me to read Sank? Because holy crap. Okay, so he's a Republican that's a pro-rapist that wants to beat up women and have sex with them. There was a whole number of things that he went on about that were so horrific, and and he wants to have sex with 16-year-olds. Okay, then he said that men can't get raped, and then that little boys want it, and wouldn't every guy want to get raped as a kid? And so because dads had their sons raped as teens, that doesn't mean that it's rape. Okay, so that's his stance, and so that's her co-host, and those two have been tangoing for years together. Okay, he's a Republican basically at heart. So they discuss feminism and different. Why is he discussing feminism? He's a man, right? So he has nothing good to say, and everything that he has said in the past has been disgusting. So she's been fine with it the whole time, sitting next to him. I'm just saying. So it says, and differing views of women's roles in the economy and the home. You have been making the point that the debate conservatives and liberals have been having over whether women should be in the workforce or at home was a distraction from the actual issue, which is that everyone has to go to work, men, women, etc. Actually, not everybody has to go to work. Just saying. You both have to go to work because otherwise you can't make enough money because corporations have taken everything from us. Some people are left with money from their family line. Some people are disabled and they can't work. Some people are elderly, they can't work. Some people have mental health issues, they can't work. Some people are so disabled. I mean, I just touched on that. Okay, so then some people have families to take care of and there's no way to actually take care of the kids. So sometimes it might be a man that stays home and take care of the kids and the woman works, right? So you might see those things. We now have LGBTQ families, so some homes have 2 women, 2 men, 2 whatever, you know what I mean? So then it becomes a thing like that, right? So, okay, this is what they're saying now. Okay, he added, they're getting the men and women to fight each other instead of noticing that their wages did not keep up with their productivity and their wages should be $10 per hour higher than they are today. Okay, wait, you're saying that this is the problem of the world, though? It's not. It's part of male supremacy in general from men. So they did not want to pay us women at all at my job. So yeah, so if I work, right, Anna and Rapist Sank, if I work 7 days a week at 10 hours a day and get a $0 check at the end of the week, that's a problem, right? We call that work human trafficking labor beyond the sex trafficking that was going on with these men. Okay, so but in that stuff, but if I'm working 10 hours a day and 7 days a week, I should get a pretty hefty check, correct? So yes, we were working, and so they believe in not paying women. It was specifically women that they believe not paying, not men, because those men made $20 million or so a year, or such the claim, right? Yes, there's a reason why they got that much, because they keep ripping us women off. And women are paid a lot less than men, so yes, it is a female issue, mostly when women are not keep getting the same pay as men, right? And I worked more hours than a lot of men, so yeah, I should actually have had more money than men that were working less than 10 hours a day, correct? Okay, math. Okay, so then they took her, took her dig at the fight over feminism, condemning it as a more time wasting over identitarian politics. She said the biggest change that some of you might have noticed with me is that I'm done with this garbage and I'm done with it. It's a giant distraction. Oh, really? Yeah, so if you can't beat them, you just joined them, right? Okay, so you're a male supremacist now. Okay, that's fine. The co-host, but it's not like she wasn't the whole time. That's why I was saying I go that from the beginning it was like these people are claiming to be progressive, right? But technically they're just going off the same garbage that any Republican does and any Christian conservative, right? Because the ideology is to go rape kids and screw women, and that's just what she's doing. So she said the biggest. Okay, the co-host continued shaming the left. Here's the thing, too. I don't find any side okay on any of these topics. So it isn't like I wouldn't trash the left either, and I always trash the right. But the left is the same thing. They just present themselves like they're the help when they're not, right? They're supposed to be pushing societal progress. Well, you just trashed everything that was going where we're getting progressive here. To going back to saying F women and we need to do this and control force and all this crap. Okay. And the more we focus on it, and it's definitely very obvious to me when it comes to the left, the people who were supposed to be fighting for a better economic system, actually who was fighting for a better economic system was like Bernie, actually, and they completely trashed the hell out of him. But they were supposed to be doing UBI, right? And the joke was that they had to test it out, which is a joke, right? UBI would actually help actually curb a huge portion of these problems, right? So, because it would take care of, you want to make sure people could pay the rent, right? Because then you won't see them on the street, right? At least for the majority, right? And then you have some other people that, may have some further issues that you can't, fix that, just with doing that. However, you could still get them into a place where they can go stay and, you know what I mean? But people need money to live, which you just said, right? So by not giving people money, they're going to be out on the street, right? So that's some of the things in the system that need to be taken care of, because some people are not capable of taking care of themselves, or they cannot make, even working, right? So even working, they cannot pay the rent. So the addition that they would give them would ensure that they're not thrown out on the street. And it's a win-win for everybody, because then you don't see them out on the street, right? And then you also have it where they're paying the landlord, which the landlord, that's all he cares about, right? Is getting his money, right? So then it's a win-win when you make sure that those things, the basic necessities of life is taken care of. Then you clean up a huge portion of that problem. The drug issue is a separate thing, and that's something you can't necessarily force anybody to not do, but definitely they need to focus on some of those people's problems over there, right? But that's not everybody's problem, because they talk about it like that's everybody's problem, who she's out seeing, on the street. That's actually not true. So it says better economic conditions, better working conditions, and all that stuff pushed aside. Let's focus on the identitarian stuff. What? Working is not the main problem of the world. It has to do with white men doing all this shit. Okay, so, but that's kind of, yeah, so, okay, here's the thing. She's that typical white Karen that can afford to live in San Francisco. Okay. It's probably about the same as LA, but LA is probably a lot more than San Francisco right now, but I don't know. But anyway, it's going to be pretty close. And she's just like, I don't want to see all this horrible stuff, so please erase it from my face. Yeah. I don't care about these people of color suffering. I mean, just imagine being this person. I didn't go on like this. I was very caring to the homeless when I came out here. I didn't go, I don't want to see you on my face. I actually talked to everybody. I did. I talked to everybody. I'm not this piece of shit, okay? And here's the thing about it. I'd rather know who they are and be friendly with them. So for the most part, what happens is when you do that, I'm going to say it like this. For the most part, depending on some of these people, okay? A lot of them were pretty terrible, but they were looking for, some bad things here. But for the most part, when you befriend them and they know who you are, they tend to like look at you and go, I ain't gonna mess with them. You know what I mean? They do this thing because you're not messing with them. And in my case, they actually did somewhat protect me from some other bad, foul people, right? So I would rather know who they all are and I will talk to them and whatever, it's all cool, just don't mess with me, this type of thing. So I kind of learned a little, I mean, it was not like purposeful, but I was just talking to everybody and that kind of came out of it. So, but again, when in the other area there, some people, they don't know who you are and they're going to do some stuff. But anyway, she's a target because she has a lot of money and she's flashing it around. Probably. Let's see, wait. She added that the stuff by nature divides us and leads us more fights. No, I'll know it's because those people are bad. So, yeah, we're not actually getting in bed with people that are pro raping us, and mostly not you guys that were promoting rape a child. So yeah, no, I am gonna take that stance, and it's sort of I think it's sort of a cop out from these people because they don't want to take the responsibility that they promoted some harmful things on children, and so they don't want to be confronted on it. So they're like, oh, this is all stupid. It just causes fights. So let's move on. Like doing that thing. It's a passive aggressive type of thing. She then turned. What did they say? She then turned back to stating, anyway, sorry, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I had to get that out. Okay, then it said, who's been a diehard progressive for a year, no, hardly, and recently been calling out the leftover the politics games, because in March, the Young Turks co-hosted blasted the left for using the term birthing person to identity biological women, and she tweeted, I'm a woman, please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this shit. You're upset about your identity there. I'm not a birthing person. I didn't birth anything except for love. No, okay. No, anyway, she doubled down the next month after receiving backlash for post, adding another tweet, laughing out loud. The meltdown over wanting to be referred to as a woman rather than a birthing person is pretty wild. I'll never apologize for that, especially as biological women who had a effing time of being told I'm less than. Oh, wait, but you're upset now about that. I thought you just said it was all about work stuff and you're not for identity politics. You know what I mean? So that's why I said she's a cluster F. Okay, so, and then she's making Fox News where Fox News is prancing her around. These women are a hot mess, dude. They don't have a clue. Like, I'm telling you what the problem is. It is male supremacy. Okay, so the actual ease of her trying to sweep herself out of it and go right to it is insane. But she had always kind of been there. Because if you go back, I literally just pulled up the Mike Jeffries case, right? And they talked about it, actually, in 2010. And in it was also bad because she's like, oh, yeah, that store where there's like, a half-naked 12-year-old. I'm like, excuse me? And the problem with that is because they were promoting raping children back then, it wasn't even, they weren't even bothered by that. I didn't even know that store existed like that, you guys. I think it's crazy. Everybody's like, yeah, that was the biggest thing ever. And I'm like, I don't know what planet I'm on, but I don't know anything about that. And that's weird that they did this clip and it was talking about how these like young teens are like half naked and stuff in the store. And I'm like, what? I was like, I don't know what store that is, but you guys were down with it. I'm glad I could sit there and say I knew nothing about it because I honestly didn't. But anyway, that guy's getting sued right now. And from their victims, which they should. But yeah, no, but they were promoting it. So at no time would they look at that story because they didn't pull out the fact that he said that they said that he did sexual harassment and something in that story, and they never pulled it up in their video. And they were more concerned about them calling someone fat and being that way. And I was like, actually, the worst part is the little teens half naked and him doing this thing to employees, excuse me. And they were not bothered by those things. And I go, see, that's the thing, the normalization of that sexual misconduct right there. And I was having a flip out on them back then. And no, I mean, my stance has not changed from that point in time, really, as it has today. We're just a lot more focused on what that problem is, but it's not any different than it was then. Because I'm like, they're like pro raping kids. Like, we had a problem with it then, as we do now, and now it's just doing more research of where that came from. And they don't want to take, identity, and she goes and sides with that. But again, and it was funny because I think it was a right-winger female that actually did the digging on Sync. Now, I don't know if that same female would be sitting there promoting Trump, but they would be a hypocrite if they did that. I don't know who the person is. I would have to go back and look at, their thing on it. But no, I believe it was a right winger. I don't know, but somebody, I brought it up like early on, right? And then somebody did this like massive like research, but he technically identifies with the Republican. So he's basically like a Republican man calling himself a progressive. And she is just ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't call her progressive. She's like a follow the leader woman where she's saying, I'm done with fighting for myself. Like, that's basically what she's saying. She has no grasp on what, like, the real issue is. It's definitely not the workforce, okay? That's not why everybody's fighting. Like, how ridiculous is that? I would never say that. Like, it's a problem that women are not getting paid enough. But, and yes, the cost of living in California is absolutely insane. So why are you mad at the homeless people, about that? And you should have been mad at Brown going on there, because the issues were way, way, way back. Hell, they were way back. I one day braided him for a long time. Yeah, and we keep having men run the state government as a governor. Have been like, oh, we're against like, rape in another country, but we're not against me raping women here in our country. Like, that's where their stance is, right? So, no, I care about my identity. Yes, I do. And so do the LGBTQ, and so do people of color. So they care about their identity in this country, okay? And so do Native Indians. So I guess I'm not supposed to say American Indians because it's offensive to certain groups of Indians, okay? So this is, again, that's like an ignorance thing because none of them have told me that. But okay, so certain ones are probably okay with it and some find offense to it. And it makes sense why it would be offensive because it was theirs before America. But yeah, so I'm just saying, like, they care about their identity, unlike her going along with white male supremacists who are like, oh, identity politics, because the white man gets everything, so we don't really care. Like, they have nothing they're fighting for, right? So they're not fighting for their rights or not fighting for anything. And like, yeah, so they're the ones they're the ones that keep spewing that garbage. And she just fell along into it. I mean, I guess you would if you're in the same room with one of those pigs for like 20 years, right? I mean, I don't know how long they've been doing stuff together. It was like in the late 2007? I don't know, like way back when, you guys. They started off together and it was just a room full of swine and one woman. And I'm like, there's no way in hell, like, I could even deal with that. Because you had Sync there promoting everybody to get raped the whole time, right? And I found a new clip of some guy actually tackling it way better than I did in this portion. I was like, oh my God. This guy was so furious at this clip. And it was before like anybody really tackled the men getting raped thing, right? Except for they were bringing it up and then they're like, dude, how could you like be promoting this thing here, right? And some guy, he must have been a victim to it, right? So he's like, I cannot believe the garbage that these guys just spewed on this clip, And he did this like full-blown video like in 2010. And I ended up finding it as I was going through the later stuff on it. And I go, wow. And I gave him a compliment. I said, you were really on that. Wow. That's kind of, amazing because in 2010 there was not that voice, okay, on that topic, and anybody that tried to touch on that topic was actually a predator on top of it to other women, and wanted to make up some stories involving some stuff here. But no, this guy like legitimately did a really good video talking about it, and I was kind of proud. I was actually happy seeing it because it just let us know that, okay, there's somebody out there that actually was not for this in 2010. But I mean, I knew there was some people that were having a problem with their comments because I wasn't the only one going, what the hell? What the hell? Like in the comment section. And so then apparently they got wind of it and then they removed the video. And I keep finding this stuff and they no, like every time they're like, oh, the dad got this son raped and how is it rape? And they're like, ha 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 ha. And I was like, oh my God, it's really bad. It's really bad, you guys. And that is not progressive. That is actually very biblical, uh, Christian conservative type of thing. Because I think the majority of America anyway was like kind of a Christian conservative. And mostly when you go back really far, yeah, so it's more like we're just agreeing with old Pappy here that got like every kid raped under the sun, right? It's that. So how's it progressive? Yeah, they're like, we all got raped, at 12, we should just totally lower it. It's ridiculous that anybody would, why do they do it at 18? That's what they were doing, and I was like, oh God. Yeah, so of course, then I guess your next stance would be, oh, screw this identity thing. I don't want to be held accountable for having slaves. I don't want to be accountable for being a total racist. I don't want to be accountable for being a neo-Nazi. I don't want to be accountable for being a pedophile human trafficker. I don't want to be accountable for, just a million things, right? And you could just push it off going identity. But look who's saying that. It's a bunch of white men, particularly, mainly. The people that are picking it up. It's ridiculous to see a woman saying that. It really is. But then she's saying it at the same time, right? Well, I'm a woman and I've been having to put up with this thing the whole time. Well, here you do care about it, right? You care about it. It has nothing to do with your job, right? Nothing to do about getting paid. Nothing to do with that. Like the main issue, right? She's in a room with too many pigs, dude. That happens. Her brain went all screwy. I mean, it wouldn't happen to me now. Like, if I was in a room with all these guys, there's no way. You're not going to talk me into some bullshit like that. She doesn't have a solid foundation to know what the hell she's fighting for, right? So she don't know what the hell I don't know what the hell, how it turned into that. Handing out crack pipes. I'm like, shit, you probably picked it up and started smoking it, because I don't know what, I'm serious. I don't know what the hell her point is. You're bitching about the war on drugs, and then now you're mad that they're getting crack pipes. What's your solution? I could give a solution. I gave a solution. You don't want to do that solution because you want people to suffer. That's a different thing. So we gave a solution, and the solution is being turned into a neo-Nazi thing. They're saying socialist. I go, first of all, that needs to be done because that needs to be in place, because you need to make sure that everybody has their basic needs. You need to make sure people have their basic needs. Otherwise, you're just a straight up sociopath going on here. And then you just want to complain about everything, because that's all it is. You just want to complain about it. You're like, I don't want to see poor people on the street. Well, okay, if you don't want to see that, then you have to do something to make sure that they're not on the street. It doesn't end that in that way, right? So then you just don't want to see them, right? Because it's disgusting you. That type of thing. So I get to hear her hate speech, you know what I mean? Because this happens to anybody. What if her house catches on fire right now and the only place she has to go is the street? It's good. Like, some people did get their fair share of karma. Not that I believe in it, but people will sit, back and start trashing everybody. And all of a sudden one day, and it could happen in 20 years, all of a sudden they lose all their crap. Somebody dies and then they're thrown out on the street. And then you get to experience the whole hell that you created and the hate crimes on you because you were part of that dialogue, right? So, yes, that's idiotic. These people are ridiculous. They're like spoiled brats from hell. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really want what they want. I mean, they just want to complain about everything. As far as like, what is the solution that you're wanting? You can't like say no to everything. You have to say okay to something and do something. You know, that's the thing about it. But yeah, but like I said, for years, these people, I would not call them progressive. They're not really progressive. When you're coming out with something that has to do with caring for people, and these people are claiming that they're Christians, right? I mean, they are technically the real deal because that's how they always were abusive, right? So, but technically in addition is to care for the poor, okay? But because of the rest of their ideology, it doesn't really lead into caring for the poor in the way that they should. And this has been a chronic problem. And I confronted it in the 90s where most of the churches were not actually doing what they were supposed to be doing. And, there was only one church, like I said, that actually started building some places to let the people stay there. And regardless of his political views, because holy cow, like I was like, the guy actually did something, and I found out recently that he was somehow related to Mike Huckabee, and I was like, oh god. And the Duggars somehow like they had this connection, and I was reading up on it, and I go, that's crazy. But I had gone there like quite a few times because they lived by me, right? And some lady like told me about them, and so I went into their church one day, and then it was a really tiny place. There was nothing to I didn't notice anything bad about it. And then they said they basically just, help everybody out there. And so I didn't hear any other weird stuff from them at the time. And they did a lot of work for anybody that came by. They didn't make any judgments. They had people coming by getting their hair cut, and they'd leave food out all day. Like if you needed food, you could just walk up to their place and get some. And then they offered showers and places for them to stay there. And I go, yeah, you're the only place that does that, good on you. It's interesting that none of the other places do it, right? But in the middle of that, all the Christians were pissed off that they were doing that. And I found that to be gross. And because they should be actually praising it, right? Like really, they should be praising it. And no, so what they were doing was they started doing these full-blown attacks on that guy and trying to take his place down. And I'm like, this is insane. And he went on this fight for years and years and years with the public there in the city. And then finally they end up winning this war, right, of having him tear down this back thing and everything else. And it had been there for like 20 some odd years, I think. And so then right after it, it's just been a couple years later, right? The government goes, okay, now we're going to implement letting churches use their places for them to stay. I'm like, I've had enough of this. This conduct is so outrageous. And it reminded me of the war about the lawn, right? So they used to have this law it was like in Paramount, right? In Paramount, they had this law that you had to have like, I don't know, like 75, 80% of your yard has to be grass, right? They said you could only have grass. You can't turn it into the desert, none of that. And it has to be watered and it has to be green, right? And if you don't have a green, they're going to fine you money, right? So I went out there every day and I watered the yard for that girl, right? For free, right? I went out there and I did all this work for her, So I'm watering the yard, doing this thing so she doesn't get any more fines, right? All of a sudden, they turned around and they're like, if you guys use water, we're going to fine you for using water. And it's like, yeah, this is what they've been doing. They flip-flop all the time, like on things all the time. And they're always wrong the first time, right? And they abuse you. And then they turn around and do that. And you're like, are you going to give the money back for the water that everybody had to pay for to make sure that they don't get fined from you? I mean, which is worse, getting the fine or the water bill? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's cheaper to get the fine. I don't know.